The number one reason your narcissistic ex isn't coming back. Have you ever wondered why your narcissistic ex suddenly disappeared, even though they once acted like you were everything they ever wanted? You may have expected them to return, apologize, or chase after you when they realized they lost someone valuable. You might have spent countless nights questioning what changed and why they walked away so easily. But the truth is, the number one reason your narcissistic ex isn't coming back may surprise you. It is not always because they stopped thinking about you or completely forgot the connection you shared. Sometimes the reason is much deeper than simply losing feelings or moving on to someone else. The biggest reason is that they no longer feel the same level of control and emotional power they once had over you. Narcissistic relationships often revolve around attention, validation, and the ability to influence another person's emotions. They may have become used to knowing exactly what to say or do to create a reaction from you. When you finally stop reacting, stop chasing, and stop giving them the emotional response they depended on, something changes. You become less predictable, and that can remove the sense of control they once enjoyed in the relationship. The person who once waited for their messages, their approval, or their affection begins to see things differently. And that change can completely shift the balance of power between you and your narcissistic ex. A narcissistic person may not miss the relationship in the same way a healthy partner would miss emotional closeness. Instead, they may miss the attention, admiration, and constant reassurance they received from being connected to you. They may remember how much effort you gave, how much patience you showed, and how often you tried to make things work. When that source disappears, they might search for another person who provides the same emotional supply. This is why many people feel confused when their narcissistic ex does not return after the breakup. They remember the intense moments, the promises, and the times when their ex seemed deeply attached to them. They remember the good memories and wonder how someone could walk away from something that once felt so powerful. But they may not realize that the relationship dynamic was often built around emotional patterns rather than genuine mutual growth. A narcissistic ex may come back when they believe they can regain control or receive attention again. However, when they see that you have changed, become stronger, and no longer react the same way, they may decide not to return. Your silence can become a powerful message because it shows that their old strategies no longer work. The arguments, emotional conversations, and attempts to get your attention no longer create the reaction they expected. For someone who depends on feeling important, losing that influence can feel like losing their power. They may begin to realize that the person they once controlled emotionally is now standing confidently on their own. This is why your personal growth can sometimes become the biggest reason they stay away. They may recognize that returning would not give them the same emotional reward they experienced before. They may see that you are no longer the person who tolerated disrespect, confusion, or constant emotional ups and downs. The version of you who constantly explained yourself, apologized first, or tried to fix everything may no longer exist. A narcissistic ex often feels comfortable with familiar patterns because those patterns benefit their emotional needs. But when you break the pattern, the relationship no longer feels the same from their perspective. They may avoid coming back because they sense that you now have stronger boundaries and higher standards. They may understand that they cannot easily pull you back into the same cycle of attention, disappointment, and reconciliation. Many people believe their narcissistic ex is gone because they were not valuable enough. But sometimes the opposite is true because your strength is exactly what makes the old dynamic impossible. When you stop begging for explanations, stop proving your worth, and stop waiting for their approval, you create a different reality. You begin choosing yourself instead of constantly trying to earn love from someone who could not provide emotional security. A narcissistic ex may also avoid returning because facing you would force them to confront their own behavior. Your growth can remind them of the things they avoided taking responsibility for during the relationship. Instead of admitting mistakes, some narcissistic individuals prefer to move towards situations where they can maintain their preferred image. Returning to someone who now sees clearly can feel uncomfortable for them. They may know that the same tactics that once worked will no longer have the same effect. They may prefer a new connection where their patterns have not yet been recognized. This is why some narcissistic exes disappear after realizing you are no longer emotionally available for manipulation. They are not necessarily leaving because you meant nothing. They may be leaving because the relationship no longer provides the same benefits it once did for them. The most important thing to understand is that their absence does not define your value. Someone choosing not to return does not mean you were easy to forget or impossible to love. It does not erase the memories, the effort, or the genuine emotions you brought into the relationship. It may simply mean the old version of the relationship cannot exist anymore. The moment you reclaim your confidence, protect your peace, and stop seeking validation from them, you change the entire dynamic. You become someone who no longer needs their attention to feel complete. And that is often the moment when a narcissistic ex realizes they have lost access to the person who once gave them so much emotional energy. They may notice that you are no longer waiting for their approval or hoping they will finally choose you. But your goal should never be to make them come back or regret leaving you. Your goal should be to become so emotionally strong that their return is no longer the measure of your happiness. Because the greatest victory after a toxic relationship is not seeing someone come back. The greatest victory is reaching a place where you no longer need them to. Remember, healing is not about proving your worth to someone who failed to appreciate it. Healing is about recognizing your value and building a life where your peace becomes your highest priority. A narcissistic ex may walk away because they lost control of the old version of you. But the person you become after healing is someone they can no longer easily break. The stronger your boundaries become, the less power their actions have over your emotions. And sometimes the reason they never come back is because deep down, they know you are no longer available for the same cycle again. The person they left behind was someone who hoped they would change. But the person you become afterward is someone who finally understands that your own transformation matters more than their return. And that realization is where true freedom begins. If this message helped you understand your narcissistic ex in a different way, remember that healing begins when you stop searching for answers from someone who created confusion. Their decision to stay away does not determine your worth, your beauty, or your ability to be loved. Sometimes losing someone who constantly drained your energy becomes the beginning of finding yourself again. The goal is not to make your narcissistic ex regret losing you. The goal is to rebuild your confidence, protect your peace, and create a life where your happiness no longer depends on someone's attention. You deserve a relationship where love feels safe, communication feels honest, and your emotions are respected. If you are choosing healing over chasing, remember that every step forward is proof of your strength.